Good morning, everyone. For those of you who have joined, welcome to day 3 of our workshop. For those of you who have joined and have tried out the spoken tutorials on turbulence, if you have any physics based question, please go ahead and ask now. Professor Janani has already joined, so she's here to answer your questions. You can also post it on the chat box as always.
Good morning, everyone. This is Janani. So I hope all the physics essential things were okay yesterday.
Ma'am, good morning. Can I ask a question based on a y plus value, but this is not related to open form. Is that okay?
That's fine. Please go ahead.
Okay. So what we had was when I was trying to check for y plus value using a standard wall function, I was getting a value of around 4. But then if I use something like enhanced wall treatment, then I'm getting a value of less than 1, which was actually what I was looking for. So I was not sure if I can simply try to take it as enhanced, because I believe enhanced means it assumes it to be a logarithmic function near the wall.
Right. So just to add to that thought process, you're not wrong in your thought process. So we'll have to understand two aspects of it. Number one is that you have that university, you can think about it in terms of the universal velocity profile, and you have the near wall viscous sublayer, then a buffer layer and a logarithmic layer. Now, how is this equation coming about? Through experiments. And this is a formulation that we have put in, very simplistically put into any software, right? So that for a y plus value, it will know what u plus to take out. Now, the tricky problem here is that the y plus, which is an empirical, this u plus versus y plus is an empirical formulation which has, for different formulations, you have different y plus ranges. Some are more accurate after 50, some are more accurate in 30 to 50 range. So typically these numbers come with a recommended value, which is your two equation turbulence model. Okay, so what do those recommendations say? That if my y plus falls within this range, I am more or less accurate when I choose a u plus using this formula. Okay, so this is the physical understanding. But now the challenge is, how does any software determine this y plus within the code? You have generated a mesh, and the mesh that you have created, the first cell mesh, was using like I said yesterday, a wall shear of a very generic empirical equation. In the actual code, that's going to be different for every cell near the wall, depending on the velocity it sees. So then what happens is that the problem shifts to not just identifying u plus equal to y plus function accurately, meaning a turbulence model, but also internally how the code determines its y plus, because once it finds the y plus, only can it go to the empirical formula, plug it in and get a u plus. So how does it determine the y plus? Like I said yesterday, it is an iterative process which slightly moves into the numerical algorithm aspect of it. Okay, so what happens is there are two equations. One has both equations are related to the wall shear, how the code inside calculates. Each has a different way of calculating and how it is linked to y plus. So without going into too many details, when you select a standard wall function, right, what happens is this iterative process begins and it converges on a y plus and tau wall based on that iterative process. Okay, and when you choose a standard wall function, the y plus that this iterative process operates gives a different y plus than when you choose an like an extended or a blended wall function. Okay, only because of this iterative process, which is a numerical process, which also engages with this turbulence model. Okay, so that is where you're seeing different y plus values. So there is a physical aspect to it, and there is a numerical iterative problem with it, which is why when you choose a standard wall function, you get one particular y plus, and when you choose a blended wall function, you get another y plus, right? And based on that y plus, you're going to get a u plus value. So like you rightfully said, it's a very fine balancing task that you will have to try and pitch your mesh size. And if you don't want blended wall functions, if you're say operating where you know the flow is turbulent, then you will have to ensure that your y plus somewhere ranges in the range of 30, right? So if you have to try and do that, you will have to play around with the turbulence model. There are some codes which have an option of how to iteratively solve this equation to determine y plus. OpenFOAM has one option. I'm not going into too many details into that, but then that you have to choose that to break that, to change that iterative prediction. And it's definitely a back and forth job till you align the values. I hope I'm clear. I'm not going into too many details, but I'm just touching on the important points. Is that clear, sir?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Ma'am, how to choose turbulence intensity and mixing and for non-standard problems? Okay, so now that's, for example, if you have jet impingement kind of studies where you don't know ready-made what your turbulence intensity is, the ways and means of doing it, typically what I tell my students are two ways. Number one, identify 2-3 recommended formulations, maybe not for your application because it's really non-standard. Use those formulations to, for example, see, jet impingement, you'll have to find out where these non-standard problems start aligning to your standardized problems. For example, for jet impingement, you have a flow coming out of the inlet nozzle, right? And then it will come and hit a wall. So I tell my students, break the problem into two parts, wherein you see something flow through a pipe. See, as the jet is just exiting the pipe, it's like, near a pipe. So you will typically have a turbulence intensity parameter standardized formulation for that. Now, when it's hitting the wall, it's like a stagnation region zone. And so you will have to find out something that is closer to some formulation, which is closer to such a application. And then you kind of determine 2-3 such formulations which are bordering on standardized problems, or when everything is put together become your complex problem, right? So get an estimation of the turbulence intensity in these values, which will give you a range. After that, you start your simulation in maybe somewhere in between, right at the middle of these values, and you observe again what the solver predicts, because your turbulence intensity greatly affects this y plus u plus combination. So see if your mesh, your y plus settles down in and around the mesh that you set, and what the solver is giving out matches. So again, it's a optimizing task for non-standard problems. I hope that is clear. So typically identify the ranges where it hits the standardized problems, and use formulations and get a mid-range or an average value between all these numbers. Okay, Kaliswaran, Mr. Kaliswaran, is it possible to run supersonic flow analysis using OpenFOAM, or we have to write separate equations? No, I think supersonic is very much possible. We do have simulations which are possible, so you have no issues with that. Some case studies are also there. You can actually start with the case study list. If you go through them, you will find some shockwaves related stuff. I mean, I think Ashley and Divyesh are here to take your tutorial related questions as well. And I think we want to get that done as well before we start with today.
Right. So if anyone has any tutorial related question, problem that they faced, Ashley is here, Divyesh is here, they can help you out. So please go ahead and post it on the chat box. Yes, Sheetal. We announced it yesterday that the turbulence related tutorials were to be tried at home. You can,
Actually, I have missed it yesterday. So, if
no problem.
there is.
So you can access the same from the Spoken Tutorial website, or you can download the CD content link that we have shared in your guidelines email.
Okay,
So the reason we tell you to download it from the CD content link is because then you can work offline and you will not be affected by the network bandwidth or anything.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. Professor Janni, I think there's another question for you.
Yeah.
Can we deal with the transition part in OpenFOAM, particularly the laminar turbulent transition in mixed convection?
Okay, so typically OpenFOAM is equipped to handle mixed convection. You can do it, it's not an issue. The problem with mixed convection is like you talk about this transitional zone. You have stability issues, but it is not something that is uncontrollable and so much more different than a commercial solver. Stability is perfectly okay. You just have to monitor again the velocities that are being generated, and typically you're struggling with the stability of the solver. That's what you're dealing with, and your mesh size has to adapt to that to take care of this. But it's completely doable in OpenFOAM. Yeah. Where do I get 2D heat conduction in Spoken Tutorials? So Spoken Tutorials does not have a 2D heat conduction problem as such. But this morning we will be touching upon some baseline things. So I think we will get to that in a bit, the first half. Some part of it, yes.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yeah.
I have a question related to the turbulence models. So as being a CFD individual, how do you actually, what is the procedure you follow to adopt the proper turbulence model for a given condition?
Okay, so the first step you will have to do is for your problem, what do you expect the Kolmogorov length scales to be, right? So just to break it down for people, other people also to understand, turbulence, essentially you can view it as small circular vortices or eddies, like I mentioned yesterday. And the phenomenon, if you think of it very simplistically and physically, is if you have a huge pipe, you will have, vortices or circulations of the scale of the diameter of the pipe. If you have a 15 mm pipe, you will have scales of 15 mm. But, because of turbulence tends to tear these vortices. So you can talk about it as large pockets of swirling energy, which because of the swirling and thing will break up into smaller scales of eddies or circulating currents, which will again get broken down into smaller. So as you go into very small length scales, that is what there is a balance between production and dissipation of turbulence. How do I understand this? If you see, like if you throw some second fluid into a first fluid tank, like you pour something into the first fluid tank, you would perceive it as turbulence hitting the thing, right? And then what will you do? You will try and add a stirrer and circle it so that it becomes uniform and dies down. Okay, but you are actually creating turbulence, but that seems to be dissipating the turbulence and making the flow uniform. Okay, so very simplistically, there's a production term and a dissipation term, and each of these terms only will decide if your flow continues to be turbulent or the turbulence dies down at some point. It's a summation of these two terms, and these two terms are in a way calculated using the length scales of the eddies. Okay, what is the size of your eddies? What is the velocity of the eddies? That will determine whether you're producing more or you're dissipating more. Okay, now your understanding of the problem will actually say whether you're expecting turbulence to die down or not. So that is a good first idea to keep in the mind. Second, there are some standard formulations to very simple formulations which will let you determine the length scale of these eddies, typical length scales of these eddies. Okay, so once you determine using again standard formulations, I will again recommend you to break down your non-standard problem to a problem which is standard, which ranges in standard values. So if you expect that near the wall it is going to have a lot more, if I have a very rough surface put in, I expect a lot more circulations. So maybe a K omega treatment is better, right? So, but further away from the wall, I have a jet blowing in, so I don't expect too much of circulation, but a K epsilon kind of treatment. So go in and determine the length scales and time scales for these extremes. Okay, so then it will give you an estimation of the length and time scale that's required. That will directly feed into your kind of Y plus that you want to capture. If your length scale is too small and you cannot afford this, the third point becomes your meshing capability. Can you solve within 1 month? Do you have server time enough for a 1 month run, or you want to do a 1 day run, right? And accuracy will drop accordingly. So then you will have to, based on the length and time scales, you'll have to say, no, I can't go to this length scale. Let me capture eddies of a slightly bigger length scale, right? So then you will have to use your Y plus understanding for that. After that, you have, in the first step, you have broken down to the, the problem into 2 standardized problems. Is it 2 standardized problems like K epsilon and K omega? Then you've determined the length and time scales, compared it to your meshing, and you're saying that the meshing capability is there. Then you go back to the first step and you say, okay, I believe these 2 turbulence models will work out. Is my Y plus value able to match with the Y plus recommendations of the turbulence model, right? And it has to be then an iterative process of whether your turbulence intensity matches to the length scales that you've determined and the Y plus values that you can computationally manage and what the turbulence model recommend. So it's a mix of all of this, but this is the typical procedures that you have to follow. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Shubham. Ma'am, if we change the turbulence models, will there be any significant effect on the solution on a particular Reynolds number? See, the problem is not the Reynolds number. You will see deviations in, say, pressure drop. The reason being, your turbulence models are typically, what they're trying to do is trying to predict near the wall, near a boundary, how your velocity changes right from a 0 no slip boundary condition to something in the medium. So right at the wall, like I said, it's a play between the wall shear and the inertia forces, the viscous and inertia forces. So if you get your turbulence model wrong, there are 2 regions where it is a problem. One near the boundary, so your pressure drop values start to deviate from experiment. If you change the turbulence models, that is. The second thing is your heat transfer. You will have an impact on the heat transfer. You'll see different heat transfer capabilities, more Nusselt number, less Nusselt number. And I think pretty much on the bulk flow, it has a lesser impact. It's more in relation to a boundary or a heat transfer region that this will greatly change values. I hope that helps.
Hello, ma'am. This is Harsh here.
Yeah, go ahead, Harsh.
Yeah, actually, yesterday you taught us about the Y plus value and its importance. So I had a doubt that instead of calculating all the wall shear stress and everything, isn't there some way in which we can directly specify you have to keep this value of Y plus, you have to keep this value of Y plus, and according to that, the software will do the meshing?
Okay. So right now, the problem there is, if I understand your question correctly, you're saying I'm going to set a Y plus that I want, right? But how do you know what Y plus you want? you might presume that the particular flow that you have, you want to solve it by an epsilon. But
No, not in that way. Not in that way. Sorry to interrupt. Not in that way. Actually, I'm saying is I know what I want to keep my y plus value as, but is there some way in which I can tell the software that this is the y plus value I want, and you have to do the meshing according to this, such that the cell center lies in this y plus value?
See, the problem there is not your meshing at all, because once you decide the y plus that you want, you're going to create the mesh, right? So the meshing, first round meshing and keeping a y plus of that range, as far as your mesh is concerned, is not an issue. The problem starts wherein the solver comes in to solve for the velocity, right? So once it starts to solve for the velocity, y plus, like you say, has to be in terms of the wall shear, right? You decided on a y plus, but the solver for every cell will see a particular wall shear because of the iterative way it is solving, the simple algorithm and all that. It has its internal localized wall shear calculation, which is in a way you are only specifying an overall y plus. You're not talking about an individual cell by cell case, and the solver is seeing that. So the problem starts there, that once the solver sees an internal y plus, it will only choose, the turbulence model will only choose what y plus lies there. It doesn't care about your mesh per se. So that is where you have to start aligning the mesh y plus to what the solver is seeing. And that's where the problem lies of, back and forth.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Again, if there are any questions related to the spoken tutorials, for those of you who have tried out the turbulence tutorials on turbulence, please post your questions or ask them. And also, of course, any physics related questions.
Hello, ma'am. Harsh here again.
Go ahead, Harsh.
Yeah, so what if I don't have a uniform mesh, as in then the y plus value will vary from cell to cell. So how will it affect my answer or my accuracy for the answer?
You will have to go for the most restrictive y plus and choose a turbulence model which will encapsulate all of that. Right? So then that's where your extended wall functions or your blended wall functions help you out, because they allow you to, span a large range of y plus.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Professor Janani, someone has posted a question asking, when they simulate wake of a ship, whether they should go by Lagrangian approach or Eulerian approach.
Okay, so the question here is, what would you be interested in? Now, the wake of a ship has two aspects of it. One is completely an underwater wake and turbulence generation underwater, or at the interface wherein you do see the ripples being generated, so on and so forth. So if your interest is the interface, like you've mentioned, you would have to go for the Lagrangian approach. Yes, that's why I would recommend the Lagrangian approach. Something like a dam break problem, right? So, or you see something different. It's an interface between your air and water on the surface. So I think an interface treatment would be the best for you. Okay. So there are some, I'll first answer Mr. Kaliswaran. So typically your first round of check should be with the K epsilon model. If you are going to be using a full flow, K omega typically is more useful when you see a lot of circulation, because the omega term predicts the circulation a little bit more better. The first round test should be with the standardized model, either of them. If yours is a really high speed flow, after the standardized test, you should go into the high RE models, which are a little bit more advanced if you are interested in really high speed flows. But these two models, either of them, if there is circulation, then you can try the K omega. That should be able to give you a first round estimate for sure. I'll try and answer Flacio first. So is it possible to model geometry parametrically in OpenFOAM so that I don't have to keep changing the blockmesh tick file? By parametrically, you mean to say something like a ICEM CFD kind of console where you keep changing just values so that you can not operate with that. That's one interpretation of what you've asked. The other interpretation, which I think is more appropriate, is I think there is a way of, for example, you say x1, x2, x3 are variables, and x1 denotes, or n1, n2, n3 are variables, and n1 denotes the number of nodes on the x direction, n2, and the only thing that you have to now change is just the n1, n2, n3 values at the beginning of the block mesh file, so that you don't have to worry about going and changing every coordinate. That is possible, and that's what I interpret as what you mean by geometry parametrically. So it is possible. Yeah.
Ma'am, can you hear me? This is Flacio.
Yes, Flacio, go ahead.
Yeah. My actual question was, like, let's say, for example, I'm modeling flow through a pipe, and after every iteration, after every modeling, I want to change the diameter of the pipe and run the same simulation, same parameters.
Okay.
But just the diameter has to change.
Right. That's very possible. So as far as you're concerned, you'll have to, you would be interested in altering the mesh as a scale to the diameter. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so that's typically possible. Like I said, if you want to do, you give a scaling number as, scale 1 is a variable, scale 2 is a variable, scale 3 is a variable, and D is a variable as well. So you just do D by, scale 1, D by scale 2 to determine how much nodes it itself will calculate. Yeah, that's completely possible. Divyesh or Ashley can come in and add to it.
Can I add something, Dr. Janani?
Yeah, Chandan, go ahead.
Yeah, so Chandan here. So just to extending what Dr. Janani said, you can also use the powerful tool of PyFOAM, which is a Python wrapper with OpenFOAM, where you can automatize whatever you are telling. Okay, so you can write a Python script to tell that I want to run a batch of cases with change diameter, being the full case directory, the same settings. So you can create a similar case file with the same settings and then write a Python script and use PyFOAM to automatize it, like to run a batch of 10, let's say 10 cases with different diameters, which is very powerful, I guess, in OpenFOAM. So you can take help of it.
Thank you, sir.